Yo, what's up? Today is Valentine's Day, a day about love, compassion, and companionship. And who else has your back through thick and thin like FL Studio's effect plugins? True ride or dies if you ask me. And speaking of companions, this video is a companion to my last tier list video. A few weeks ago, I did a video ranking all of the plugins in FL Studio in a nice tier list. That video was focused on instruments and generator plugins, so today we're gonna rank all of the effect plugins in FL Studio and see where they pale in comparison to Soundgoodizer. I'm using the same template that I used in my last tier list, but I'll quickly go over them if you haven't seen that video. By the way, you should probably go watch that video. At the top, S tier, Beast. The cream of the crop. These are the best of the best in FL. A tier, very good. These are plugins that I like to use a lot, but are just a cut below the best. B tier, cool, nice to use. These plugins are nice, functional, and reliable, but they might get overlooked by other plugins. C tier, kinda niche. These plugins work well, but might only have a use for 1 or 2 situations. And D tier, not the vibe. Plugins that are a bit underwhelming, and I might pass it up to use something else. And lastly, there are the plugins I never use. And I would like to clarify that the never used tier is not an F tier. It doesn't mean never use this plugin, it's trash. It means I'm simply inexperienced with this plugin, so I can't rank it properly. But obviously, that didn't fit. But unlike the instrument and generator plugins tier list, the effects are a bit trickier to place. Many of the plugins do the same or similar things, so a lot of my placements come down to functionality, ease of use, presets, and workflow preference. This is going to be a very long video. There's double the amount of effects compared to generators in FL, so grab a snack, get comfy, and let's get started. Control surface. Control surface lets you make knobs and sliders that you can use to control different aspects of a sound. You can use it on its own or use it in tandem with Patcher. You can also customize and recolor the knobs and sliders to make them look unique. This can be helpful when you're making your own plugin style patches in Patcher. It's good to know how to use, but it really does shine when in use with Patcher, but on its own, it's just a simple controller, and I have to rank it by itself, so by itself, I would say it's kinda niche. Destructor. Destructor is a very cool 4-in-1 effect plugin, allowing you to layer distortion, filters, chorus, and speaker cabinet simulation. Each effect is using different controls from other plugins in FL Studio as well. The distortion has presets from Fast Distortion and Harmor, filters come from Flex, the chorus is based off of Fruity Delay 3, and the speakers come from Fruity Convolver. It's kind of like a megazord of Fruity effects. You can also change which effects are being played and even layer the same effect more than once, just in case you ever wanted 4 instances of distortion. I actually use this plugin a lot. It's one of the only plugins with a bit crush effect in FL, so that's pretty handy sometimes. But other than the distortion settings, I don't really use it for the other effects that much. But I do appreciate that I have the option and the plugin is still very easy to use. It fits my workflow perfectly, so I'm putting Destructor in high B tier, low A tier. Edison is an audio editor and recorder. No, not that type of recorder. Allowing you to record any sound playing in FL Studio. It also lets you loop and slice a sample to give it its own unique flair. This plugin works great for consolidating samples and sample chops. You can even resample sounds at lower bit rates for that dark Drake vibe. But overall, Edison is awesome. It's kind of scary at first, but once you learn the ins and outs of it, it becomes pretty essential in your workflow. S tier. And if you want to use something to help your workflow, you can always use Melodics. Melodics is a desktop app that helps you build your skills with your MIDI keyboard. With over 1,500 courses, lessons, and exercises to choose from, Melodics covers every aspect of learning the piano, from learning the notes and finger placements to practicing scales and hand coordination. And everything's organized with different courses so you can improve exactly where you want to. Melodics keeps track of your accuracy and timing while you play and gives feedback on what you need to work on. It makes learning the piano pretty fun and intuitive. And the courses are also designed with different genres in mind, so if you want to practice hip-hop, synthwave, or jazz, Melodics has you covered. And right now, Melodics has introduced songs, and you can learn how to play real songs from real artists. Right now, I've been learning Lost by Frank Ocean because I just love that song, and it's so much fun to play. And with the knowledge you gain from Melodics, it can be used outside of the app, like working on your own music, jamming out in a studio session, or even performing live. If you want to try it out, there's a link in the description. It is free to download. Effector. Effector is a multi-effect effect, with 12 different effects to choose from. And it also uses an X and Y axis controller to change the harshness of each effect. This plugin kind of feels like an overstocked store of FL Studio effects. It has a lot going on, but it never has what I'm looking for. The controls on the effects are kind of surface level, and I would rather just use a dedicated plugin for each one of those effects. I've always had more problems than solutions with Effector, so it's going in not the vibe. EQO. EQO is an EQ. Oh. I'm sorry. It's a morphing graphic equalizer. It's used for making large dynamic EQing rather than surgical EQ points. There's also a pan setting on this plugin, so it can work well for putting sounds in stereo. This plugin seems cool, but personally, I don't use it enough, so I have to put it in never used. Frequency shifter. Its name is self-explanatory, it shifts frequencies. By shifting these frequencies, you can make your sample or instrument sound metallic or dissonant. This plugin works well for dubstep basses, and you can even use it for some cool vocal effects. But other than that, I haven't found a ton of uses for this, so I'm gonna put it in kinda niche. Frequency splitter. Frequency splitter allows you to split audio into low, mid, and high frequencies, and you could send those bands to other effects. For example, if you want to put a reverb on a sample but you don't want it to affect the bass of that sample, you can use Frequency Splitter to only affect the high ends of the sound. It's a pretty cool plugin. You can even use it as a regular EQ as well. It's cool, it's nice to use. 7-band EQ. 7-band EQ is a pretty straightforward equalizer. It's split up into different hertz and you can increase and decrease each band. If you just need a simple EQ, it works just fine, but because they are at fixed bands, it doesn't have as much control as other EQs in FL. But even so, it's cool, it's nice to use. Fruity Balance. Fruity Balance is a volume and pan control effect. You can use it to balance the volume of your signal or pan sounds from left to right. I never use this plugin, I usually just use the volume and pan knobs that are built into the channel rack. It does the same thing. Fruity Bass Boost. Fruity Bass Boost is a very simple plugin. It allows you to choose a low frequency and boost it. It works fine, it's very simple, it's cool. Fruity Big Clock. Fruity Big Clock is a visual plugin. It just displays the time of your beat in both bars and seconds. I also like that you can scale this plugin to make it huge. Big clock energy. I guess this plugin works well for people who are recording and they just want to see the time better. Maybe they're afraid of using glasses. It's fun, but it's kind of niche. Fruity Blood Overdrive. Fruity Blood Overdrive is a distortion plugin. It adds a loud and warmer texture to your sound and really makes your basses hit super hard. It also has a sleek and cool visual design, and you can change its theme. It's not necessary, but that's a plus. I do like this plugin a lot. It's simple to use and works like a charm. A tier. Fruity Center. Fruity Center is used for centering sounds with DC offset. Sometimes when you're using sounds with a lot of effects, it'll add a lot of inaudible noise that still take up space in a mix. Fruity Center just gets rid of that DC offset by recentering the sound. I'm sure this plugin comes in handy for mixing and mastering, but it is kinda niche. Fruity Chorus is a straightforward chorus effect. It gives you a lot of control from the depths, stereo, and LFOs. It's a fine plugin, but I don't know, I'm just not a huge chorus effect guy. I rarely use this. Fruity Compressor. Fruity Compressor? Do be compressin'. It's a cool compressor and you could push your signal pretty hard in it. It gets the job done, but I don't love it. I don't know. I think it's because I'm more of a visual learner and I tend to like compressors like limiter more. I simply don't use it. Fruity Convolver. Fruity Convolver is pretty interesting. I didn't know that this was in FL until I did my research for this video. It's a reverb that combines impulses and your signal to simulate room reverberation. So you can make your sound reverb like it's in a cathedral or even a small bedroom. It sounds realistic and it's pretty easy to use. Underrated plugin, A tier. Fruity Decibel Meter. This is another visual plugin. It's like Big Clock, but it's for the volume meter. It's another plugin for people that are scared of glasses. It's kind of niche. Fruity Delays. Delays. I'm doing all the delays at once. Delay 1 is pretty bare bones, giving you just enough function to make a delay. Delay 2 is my main squeeze. It's simple to use and easy to follow. And Delay 3 has kind of a lot going on. It's a little too complex for my taste, but the presets are pretty cool. I really like the tape sound presets in it. 1 is too basic, 3 is too complex, but 2 is just right. But I don't want to downplay Fruity Delay 3. It's pretty powerful, but it's just a little bit too much going on for my taste. But I still like using it. I'm putting Delay 1 in never used, but Delay 2 and 3 are going in A tier. Fruity Delay Bank. Oh shit, there's another one. Delay Bank uses 8 different delay units to create unique multi-delay effects. You can also stack these delays and make crazy delays within delays. This is one of those cool plugins that I also didn't know existed until recently, so I don't have a ton of experience with it, but I do think it's pretty cool. B tier. Fruity Fast Distortion. Fast Distortion lives up to its name. All you have to do is put it on and you'll hear it right away. I think it gives you just the right amount of control. It can come off kind of harsh at first, but with a little tender love and care, you can really make some nice bright distortion with it. I used this plugin a lot back in the day, but I've opted for more subtle distorters now, but it's still really good. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Fruity Fast Low Pass. Like Fast Distortion or Bass Boost, this is one of those quick fix plugins that have a single function. It adds a quick low pass filter. I never use this plugin, I'd rather just use an EQ to make a filter. Fruity Filter. Fruity Filter works as a low pass, band pass, or high pass filter effect. You can control the frequency cutoff and resonance of the signal as well. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, B tier. Fruity Flanger. Fruity Flanger adds a cool flanger effect on your sound. Personally, I feel like the default flanger effect is a bit too harsh, and all the knobs can be a bit daunting. It's never been a plugin I really fancied, I don't use it. Fruity Flangus, however. Fruity Flangus is nice. Flangus gives sounds that nice stereoed unison effect. It makes everything sound lush and smooth. I use this plugin quite a bit and I love how it sounds. A tier. Fruity Formula Controller. Formula Controller lets you create a moving formula that can be linked to a controller. Yeah, math, I know, it sucks. But it's pretty helpful from time to time. I like to use it to automate panning on hi-hats or other sounds that I kind of want stereoed. It's pretty handy and lets me automate sounds without needing to use an automation clip. It's helpful, but it's kind of niche. Fruity Free Filter. Fruity Free Filter. I used to use this plugin for filter sweeps back in the day, but I've always had problems with the resonance on it, and I ended up just using other plugins over time. For me, it's not the vibe. Hardcore. Hardcore is low-key fire. I know it turns a lot of people off because the default preset is simply too loud, but there are some cool features in Hardcore. It's got its own set of built-in effects to help simulate guitar pedals and give your signal that dirty, hardcore sound. Personally, I think it's B tier. It would have been A tier had that default preset not been so loud. Fruity Limiter. Fruity Limiter is the GOAT. The GOAT. You can use it in so many ways. It works great for peak reduction, you could use it for side chaining, and you can even use it as a soft clipper on your master. It's the everything plugin that's a beast at everything. The ace of all trades, S tier. Fruity Love Filter. Fruity Love Filter uses a multi-bank system, kind of similar to Delay Bank. You can use it to stack filters and create unique delays with gate effects. It makes for some cool morphing filter effects. Fruity Love Filter, I don't fruity love you. C tier. Fruity LSD. Fruity LSD is actually a hidden instrument bank in FL's effects list, giving you access to some popular vintage keyboard presets from Roland. This would be nice as a regular instrument plugin, but because it isn't, I'm putting it in kind of niche. Multi-band delay. A newer addition to FL Studio, this plugin lets you delay different bands all at slightly different milliseconds, creating cool, otherworldly, and grainy effects. It's interesting, but it's kind of niche. Fruity Mute 2. Fruity Mute lets you turn off the sound of a given signal, and you can control the left or right channels of that signal as well. It's cool if you want to hear nothing. I don't know, I don't use it. Fruity Multiband Compressor. Multiband Compressor lets you compress high, mids, and lows all at once with pretty in-depth control. I use this plugin all the time. It's on all of my mastering chains. It's simple and it sounds great. It's low-key S tier. Fruity Notebook and Notebook 2. Fruity Notebook lets you write notes in your project files. You can use it to leave messages if you plan on sending your project out to other people, or use it for writing lyrics. Personally, I don't use it. I just like to write lyrics on my phone. Fruity HTML Notebook. It works just like Fruity Notebook, but instead of the rich text format that Fruity Notebook uses, HTML Notebook lets you open HTML links. It can come in handy if you want to leave your links in a project file, but I've just never used this. New Time and New Tone. I'm lumping these two together. These plugins do two completely different things, but I pretty much have the same critiques for both plugins. New Tone lets you import sounds and snap certain clips of a sample into different pitches. If Auto-Tune does that automatically, this would be considered manual tune. New Time lets you stretch and cut samples to fit the time of your project. Now, these plugins do really cool things, but they're just too finicky to work with. I've always had problems just navigating the plugins and getting them to play back the changes I made. I'm gonna put them in C tier because even though they do cool things, I don't enjoy using them. Panomatic. Panomatic is a panning effect with a built-in LFO function, allowing you to adjust the pan or volume of the signal automatically. You can actually use this plugin instead of Formula Controller to do that panning method I talked about, and you can even do some cool choppy LFO wobbles with it. I wish there was a way to make it in sync with the tempo. I'm kind of bummed that it can't. It's kind of niche. Fruity Parametric EQ. Parametric EQ works as a slightly more complex version of the original 7-band EQ, but now we can move the bands. It's cool, it's nice to use. Fruity Parametric EQ 2. Now EQ 2 is the incredible upgrade from EQ 1. It works just as fine as a simple equalizer, but you can do so much more with it now. You can manipulate each band and move them wherever you want. You can do surgical EQing while also doing a low pass filter if you wanted. And I absolutely love the visualizer that plays through the EQ. It makes it so much easier to find frequencies you want to increase or decrease. It's so handy, it's so easy to use, and there's a lot of great presets in it. It's S tier.
He does exactly what I do, but better.
Fruity Peak Controller. Fruity Peak Controller is used to automate the signal in response to another volume input. This plugin is mostly used for sidechaining. Personally, I never use this. I'm more of a Fruity limiter type of guy. Fruity Phase Inverter. It's a simple plugin used to invert phases to the left or to the right. That's it. Personally, I never use it. Fruity Phaser. Fruity Phaser is a simple phaser plugin, giving you that large phaser sound similar to a flanger, but a little bit more pronounced. To be honest, I don't really use phasers, so I don't use this plugin. There's a lot of plugins I don't use, fuck. Fruity Reverb. I've actually never used the normal Fruity Reverb, mostly because I'm a diehard Reverb 2 supporter, but I actually don't mind how this sounds. This plugin also suffers from the too many knobs for my small brain syndrome, and I wish there was a little bit more visual aid with it, but it's good, it sounds nice, B tier. Patcher. Patcher is back at it again as an S tier plugin. Patcher is already really good to use as an instrument in FL, but I feel like it has so much more potential as an effect plugin. I've already seen so many talented artists and producers make their own plugins in Patcher as like a shortcut for workflows or as a free alternative for other more specific plugins. There's endless possibilities with this. The sky's the limit. S tier.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Pitch Shifter. I didn't know this existed, but it's pretty cool. It lets you control the pitch shift and formant shift in a bunch of cool different directions. This would come in handy for some cool background vocal effects. I like it. B tier. Pitcher. FL Studio's built-in auto-tune. It's not nearly as robust as third-party auto-tune plugins, but I have used it in many songs in the past, and it does get the job done. I do wish it was a little bit more responsive like other auto-tune plugins, but if this is all you have, don't be afraid to use it. I'd put it in B tier, it's cool. Fruity Reverb 2. Ah yes, oh reliable. A good EQ and a reverb can fix everything but a broken heart. But for real though, this reverb is a staple in my production. It's used in almost every single song I've made. It just sounds so good and it's so simple. It's a certified FL Studio classic, S tier. Fruity Scratcher. Fruity Scratcher is the effect version of the plugin Wave Traveler, giving you vinyl control over sounds you import into the effect. You can do cool scratching effects with it, but you're limited to the sounds imported rather than the sound in the mixer. I don't really use it. Fruity Send. Fruity Send lets you send signals from one mixer track to another. It's very helpful for having multiple instruments running through a single effect. So instead of having 4 instruments with reverb on each, you can instead use Fruity Send and send all 4 instruments to the same reverb send, making everything sound cohesive. I know it's good practice to use Send for certain effects, but I don't use this plugin a lot. I actually use the settings in my mixer channel that gives me 4 mixer tracks specifically for sends. But Fruity Send, I simply don't use. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I've been recording for so long. Fruity Soft Clipper. Soft Clipper is nice. For those who don't know what a soft clipper does, it works like a limiter, but instead of using saturation to dampen a sound, it uses distortion to crunch it. And Soft Clipper hit nice. It really makes your drums pop. But for me, Soft Clipper is rivaled by Fruity Limiter in the soft clipping department, so I might put this in A tier instead of S tier. Fruity Spectroman. Spectroman is a visualizer that shows sounds through a spectrograph or a sonograph. It's useful for checking frequencies while mixing. I never use this plugin. Personally, I don't even think it's the best visualizer in FL. To me, it's not the vibe. Fruity Squeeze. Fruity Squeeze takes your signal and crunches it with a bit reducing distorter, kind of like a bit crusher. It's a pretty weird plugin. It adds some cool textures, but I don't love it. It's pretty meh to me. I never use it.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit that I have ever heard.
Fruity Stereo Enhancer. Stereo Enhancer enriches the stereo image of a sound. Personally, I never use it, mostly because I like Fruity Stereo Shaper. Fruity Stereo Shaper does pretty much what Stereo Enhancer does, but better. And I just like how it stereos my sound. It just makes everything sound really nice and wide. I don't know how to explain it. I just like it more than Stereo Enhancer. Even though I use this plugin all the time, I don't think it's an amazing plugin. It's simply nice to use. Fruity Vocoder. Vocoder lets you do a classic vocoder effect, letting you play a signal through a MIDI. This can give your vocals an interesting harmonic synth vibe. It's cool for layering your main vocals with a background vocal, or if you just want it to sound like Daft Punk. I don't think Fruity Vocoder is the best vocoder in FL. It's kind of limited and it's a bit harsh sounding compared to Vocodex. Overall, kinda niche. Wave Candy. Wave Candy is a great visualizer tool with lots of options. You can view your sounds as an oscilloscope, spectrum analyzer, vectorscope, or just a peak limiter. It looks great and it has some customization features. A tier. Fruity Wave Shaper. Contrary to popular belief, I thought this plugin was a transient shaping plugin. It's not, it's a distortion plugin. Interesting. It lets you draw points on an X and Y graph to control the distortion. You can make your sounds sound pretty warm and big, or you can just go crazy with the buzz. It's pretty unique and pretty simple to use. B tier. Fruity XY Controller. Fruity XY Controller is an internal controller where you can route different controls to an X and Y axis. Personally, this plugin just isn't for me, mostly because I don't have a joystick controller, which means I'd have to use two separate automation clips to move one instance, one for the X and one for the Y. It's really not fair for me to judge this plugin. I never use it. And another plugin that I think is just as silly is Fruity XYZ Controller. Ooh. Grosbeat. One of the most influential plugins in the past few years of hip-hop. Known for its time stretch, sound gates, and pitch shift presets, this plugin was a staple in trap beats for some time. For the most part, the presets are where it's at in this plugin. It's kind of annoying and tedious to try to make anything yourself, but either way, this plugin is great. S tier. Luxverb. Luxverb is the cool, newest reverb on the block. It's got huge control over the scale and size of the reverb and makes your sounds sound lush, long, and otherworldly. And there's also a pitch control system that you can use to add some more character to your reverb. For example, I really love the octave up reverb preset. I just think it sounds so cool. I'm gonna be honest, I think Luxverb may have overtaken Reverb 2 as my favorite plugin in FL. S tier. Maximus. Maximus is a big boy multi-band compressor and mastering plugin, and you can use it in a ton of different ways. You can use it for compression, limiting, de-essing, and so much more. It's kind of like if Fruity Limiter and multi-band compressor was just rolled into one. And as an icing on top, it has the Soundgoodizer presets built into it. S tier. Soundgoodizer. Here we have it. The true meme plugin of FL Studio. The whole gimmick of this plugin is that you can make your sound good with one knob. And it works. It really does make your sound good. But when you demystify Soundgoodizer, all it really is a compressor with a bit of saturation. A lot of people think if you use Soundgoodizer, you gotta put 5 instances on it, all at full blast, which is funny, but it's simply not the case. One instance with some tender love and care can go a long way. It's got its uses, it's very simple, but it truly does live up to its name. A tier. But for the memes, S tier.
Woo! Yeah, baby!
Transient Processor. Transient Processor is a handy tool used for shaping certain sounds in a song. Transient Processor shapes the signal's transients, making them a bit softer or harder, depending on which way you pull it. It's a pretty interesting plugin, but it's kind of niche. Tuner. Low-key, Tuner should have been in FL Studio a long time ago. It just shows what key your sound is playing in. This helps a lot for finding out what note a one-shot or a single sound sample is in, and I would rather prefer this plugin just be a regular function in FL rather than it taking up an entire effect space. But it is handy. There's literally no excuse for your 808s to be out of tune now. B tier. Vintage Chorus. Vintage Chorus is a new chorus effect inspired by the Roland Juno delay chorus. It sounds so nice with that warm retro analog sound in a digital era. I think plugins like this are really cool to use because so many producers nowadays are looking to sample old and new music with this wobbly psychedelic singe to it, and plugins like Vintage Chorus help create those feelings in FL. Vintage Chorus, S tier. Vintage Phaser. Vintage Phaser, much like Vintage Chorus, is an analog-themed plugin designed to replicate the sound of this retro guitar pedal. But just like before, I'm not really a huge phaser fan, so I never really use this plugin. But it does look really cool. Vocodex. Vocodex is an advanced vocoder tool. It fuses Fruity Vocoder with a built-in carrier synth and some Maximus properties, making it the best vocoder in FL. It's very nice to use and it sounds really good. It's got a lot more articulation than Fruity Vocoder. I wouldn't say this is nice to use. It's kind of a lot to take in, but it does vocoding really great. I'm gonna put this in B tier. Z-Game Editor Visualizer. Z-Game is pretty cool. I actually use this plugin all the time. I actually use it to make the visualizer for my face when I speak, or you can just use it for making visualizers for your beats, and you can upload them into YouTube without the need of another editing software. It's a pretty neat plugin, A tier. And whew, we are done. This video took a very long time to make. I had to do a ton of research just to get the hang of each plugin, and I had a great time learning everything. It felt kind of refreshing to sit back and learn again, and I hope I was able to shed some light on the vast plugin selections in FL. But yeah, if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. It would mean the world to me. That's pretty much it. My name is Praxi. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.